So in this video, I'm going to use linear regression. Well, I'm going to demonstrate using linear regression to analyze margins for businesses. We're going to spot trends in contribution margin against cost and revenue. Now, the data set that I'm analyzing for this one is the transaction data from another video that I did. This is generated data, and this ended up being a rather strong business actually, with good margins, good cost management if it were real. We're just going to be using this again to perform the analysis and generate the visuals of the data. Now, before any model training is done, I had to import the data and do some transformations for the data. I had to fix some of the data formats in here so that it could be analyzed, such as the date actually. Perform some calculations so I could have a net profit column, because that's sort of a helper column to help me calculate the margin, as well as contribution margin, and that was multiplied by 100 so that it would be 71.84% rather than 0.7184. I also added a day column for day of the year, so that'll go from day 1 to day 365. That's so this data can be aggregated, because when you start doing math with these numbers here, you can end up with some screwy stuff with computers. You start to have variables such as infinity, and infinity is not going to work. Infinity will make computers do some wonderful stuff. Also, dividing by 0 will make computers do some wonderful stuff. So anywhere in this data set that revenue is 0, we're going to get a crazy number right here or an error message or something. We don't want that. So this is going to be aggregated by the day, and it'll also assist with the visualization. It won't just be, 190 something thousand transactions. Now, aggregating the data is simple. I just did the sum of revenue for each day. So day 1, all revenue for that day, all cost for that day. This would be your cost of goods sold. The net profit is a calculated column from revenue and cost, and contribution margin is the same. So now we're going to start to see the daily margin, and that's going to be actually what we analyze to see if cost rising affects this. We know it does, but we're going to do the visualizations and see what the model has to say about exactly how that relationship works and how one affects the other. And I did the same thing for revenue as well. Now, before we do a linear regression model, before we get into machine learning, we actually have to test for linearity. Now, it's a good guess that this is going to be a fairly linear relationship, but we do need to confirm that. And the way that we do that is we plot what's called the residuals. And this is basically the errors that a basic linear regression model would make. So the model makes a prediction, and then you have the real dot. You subtract the real dot from the prediction, or vice versa, and the absolute value of that's your residual. But you see here, these are the residuals. This random scattered about pattern right here, this tells us that it actually is linear. If it were not linear, we would see these grouped together and there would be a curve like a rainbow or a U, or it would make an S or something. So we know that cost and contribution against each other do have a linear relationship. We can also test that for revenue and contribution margin, and we see that it's totally random as well. It is scattered about, and we know that this is also a linear relationship. So we now know that we can train a linear model on this data and find the slope and the intercept and see the trend. So on to training our models. The first time I did it, I trained on cost, and I got the slope of the model, the coefficient, and what I found is for every $1,000 increase in contribution margin, for every $1,000 increase in cost, contribution margin changes by negative 2.06 on average. So what that means is for every $1,000 increase in cost, contribution margin will change by negative 2.06, so to speak. So if your contribution margin was 10%, $1,000 increase in cost would decrease it to 7.94%. And the visualization of that relationship is here. So these black dots are cost versus contribution margin, and our red line here is our model's predictions. So we are seeing that there is a negative relationship. So as cost increases, contribution margin decreases. So they're related inversely. And this is to be expected. When your costs are high, your margins are squeezed. This is exactly what we would expect from that. But our model also gave us this insight where we can see that negative 2.06 change, where if it were 10%, it would drop to 7.94%. And of course, I trained another model on revenue. And I found I did the same exact process, but I found for every $1,000 increase in revenue, contribution margin changes by 0.96 or so on average. So what this means is if contribution margin is 10%, a $1,000 increase in your revenue would increase it to 10.96%. So gaining $1,000 in revenue increases margin by nearly 1 point. Now we can look at the visualization for that, and we can really see the relationship here. This is a lot more tightly packed together, and you can see our model's prediction for this line fitted right through it all. This is a pretty solid relationship. And again, this data, even though it was mock data, if this business were real, this is a pretty strong business. This is what you would want to see with a good business. Think of it as the data looks like the business keeps about 50 cents out of every dollar it makes or something before fixed cost. So not bad at all for contribution margin. But that is how you can use machine learning and linear regression to do a margin analysis on a business and find trends in your margins.